Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Name the dog, Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in pints?
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks. We're two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is the living dynasty, the royal one-man family. Frank, how are you today?
Doing my royal wave. Thank you for being here today.
Your wave's pretty good.
Thank you.
Your wave's pretty good.
I watched the Princess Diaries. I know what I'm doing.
Cool. I remember I went on tour in England a couple of years ago, and they talked about the royal wave and like how people do it versus how you're actually supposed to do it, and like what people think it is and all that stuff. And they said what it really is, you have to imagine that you have a light bulb in your hand and you're unscrewing it from like the top, like a ceiling light, and you're unscrewing the light over and over.
So do I have to like open my fingers? Do I have to like open my fingers to like?
Yeah, there's like a particular way you have to hold your hand, like you're holding the light bulb, like your thumb's over here and the rest of your fingers are on the other side, and you're twisting the light bulb out of its socket or screwing it in, either way, I guess.
Fascinating.
Fascinating indeed. What I'm sure will also be fascinating to me and to maybe our listeners is what beer you're drinking.
I'm drinking one that I'm actually kind of excited about. I am enjoying a Narragansett Autocrat coffee milk stout.
Narragansett, that's near me.
I know. Yeah.
People would make fun of you for drinking a Narragansett, just so you know.
It's too basic. But it's the Autocrat coffee milk stout. So it is a flavored stout with coffee added. And I guess so. This is a thing that I am not super familiar with. Tim, you probably are more familiar with it than I am because you grew up in New England. But I guess Autocrat is a brand of coffee syrup. And coffee syrup,
that is correct.
Coffee syrup is a thing.
Not
people
even. That's not even
milk.
really. That's yes, that is correct. It is. Coffee syrup is not a New England thing. It's a Southern Massachusetts, Rhode Island thing. Actually, it's even more
my wife
specific.
It's familiar with it, so I thought it was all of New England.
Oh, that's so interesting because I went to high school. So I grew up in Southern Mass, and I went to high school with people who grew up in like what is not considered Southern Mass and didn't know what it was.
Interesting.
They was even just 45 minutes away didn't reach that area.
Huh. That's fascinating.
So I'm really curious how it made its way to Maine, but it's a thing from Rhode Island originally. So it's basically like coffee syrup. I mean, like chocolate syrup, but it's coffee flavored syrup instead, and you put it in milk, so you make coffee milk. But if you go to places that don't know what you're talking about, like you said, oh, I want some coffee milk. People are like, so you want coffee with milk? And you're like, no, I want coffee milk. It's a different thing.
It's like chocolate milk.
It's delicious. That's right, or a strawberry milk, or like any one of those, any one of those. But coffee milk is superior to all of them.
Ooh, okay.
Just so everyone knows.
Just to be clear.
The other ones are fine. I mean, chocolate milk is great, and all that stuff. But coffee milk is something that everybody can enjoy forever and not feel like a child.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, there comes an age where you're like, can I have chocolate milk anymore? Is that allowed?
Right. Yeah, true. It does become like, is
you can have hot chocolate.
Yeah, sure.
Is still appropriate? Yeah.
Yeah. Or adult hot chocolate.
Yeah, but anyway, tell me about Autocrat, because that sounds really good.
Yeah.
It's like the beer you're drinking.
Yes, it is. So yeah, Autocrat is one of the brands of coffee syrup, and they have being a Rhode Island company. They have partnered with Narragansett, also a Rhode Island company, and they are making this coffee milk stout, which I first discovered, I think it was last year or maybe the year before. I think it's seasonal, it's very, very good. It's a very, very delicious coffee stout that I very much enjoy. So when I saw this, I just knew I had to grab some and enjoy it because it's a fun little treat. So
is it sweet? Because like coffee milk is sweet, like chocolate milk or anything like that. So I'm curious if this, because this is obviously based on the coffee syrup and not regular coffee.
Right. It's not overly sweet. No. It's smooth and kind of dark, almost like a dark roast. And it does have a little bit of a sweet, aftertaste, or it's sweet on the back of the palate or whatever, but it's not hit you in the face sweet. It's not like a chocolate stout or something where you would immediately be like, oh yeah, this is sweet. It's more of a coffee flavor first, with a little hint of sweetness on the back. Yeah,
I get you.
It's quite good. What are you enjoying today?
I am finishing up one of the last 2 beers in my fridge, so it's not special or anything. But I'm just I told myself I have to drink the ones that are there before I go get new ones. Sure. That's even if it's not thematically correct to whatever we're talking about. Like sometimes you just gotta drink the beer that's there. So I'm drinking in I'd say in opposition to your Autocrat, I am drinking a Sam 76 because democracy.
There you go. Yeah. There's I like it.
So anyway, I thought, indeed, because today, obviously, we're talking about the American Revolution, Frank. Let's
in a way. In a way. And we're talking about, I guess not someone who is actually an autocrat, but someone whose ancestors used to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's tenuous. So anyway, let's just jump straight to the point. Frank, you finally watched The Crown. It's been on for 4 seasons, and the world has been telling you to watch it for 4 seasons, and you finally made it. Congratulations. Tell me your feelings.
Finally made it. I love it. I binged all 4 seasons of it in 12 days.
That's amazing. That's like I'm in college and I can have time to watch TV, time.
Pandemics will do that. It is 40 episodes in 12 days, so that's 3 1/3 episodes per day, which on 3 or 4, I watched 3 or 4 per day. Part of that was there was a long weekend in there, and there was some time off around Thanksgiving and stuff. But yeah, watched all of The Crown. I have been wanting to watch it, actually. It's one of those shows that I at first hadn't gotten around to, and then actually probably about 2 years ago, maybe when season 2 was coming out, I did watch the pilot. My wife and I watched the pilot. And I liked it, and I was like, I'd watch more, and she wasn't really feeling it. So we didn't continue with it. And it's one of those things where it's kind of hard to get up the motivation to start a whole new show when the person you'd be watching it with isn't into it. All right, well then I guess I'll watch something.
Yeah, because then you have to watch it on your own.
Right.
And then you're like, but I really shouldn't do that because this is our time together. So you end up just putting your own TV feelings and thoughts aside for the other person.
We just say, okay, let's just watch something we both want to watch. So The Crown sort of fell to the side. But when season 4 premiered, Marissa was really interested in the Princess Diana aspect of things. And so she started asking around to some of our friends, could we just watch the new season or do we have to watch all of it? And people were basically like, I guess you could, but please watch all of it. So we watched all of it. And it was so funny. We rewatched the pilot, and this time it just hit right. And both of us were very engaged, and wow, yeah, we tore through it, and I absolutely loved it. So I find myself I kind of enjoyed seasons 1 and 2 more than I enjoyed 3 and 4.
That's the prevailing thought, and I have thoughts of my own on that. But I have questions because you watched it in an incredibly different way than than me anyway, because I watched it right from the beginning. I was like all in, like from beginning of episode 1 when they were like actually, and I was like, yes, let's do this. Yeah. So everyone likes all the seasons from like every season is great. Yeah. Like this is a show that doesn't it like gives you back every time, but because it's getting closer and closer to the modern day, there are more and more biases present as we get closer and closer, especially from from showrunners and everything like that, because they're older, they lived through a good chunk of that. So instead of like watching the beginning of her reign in 1952 or whatever, 53, 54, something like 52. That. 52, yeah. So you watch the beginning of her reign in 52 when she's just 25 years old, and most of the people watching the show were not around yet, or they were barely around. Right. They didn't have political leanings yet. And so by the time you get to season 4 and you get to Diana, people have really strong feelings about Princess Diana one way or the other. And so the show just starts just naturally, because people are people. It starts the hindsight of history becomes much less biased. Much less unbiased, I should say, and it veers in different directions on how on how the showrunners and writers view these people.
Sure, they have their own opinions on these people and on these events, and they tend to express them one way or another. Sometimes subtly, sometimes not so much, but their opinions come through, and their biases and their conceptions or misconceptions about who some of these characters are, like, yeah, those things come through in the later seasons more. I don't think that's why I don't enjoy not to say I didn't enjoy it, but I don't think that's why I enjoyed seasons 1 and 2 more necessarily.
I have more.
Oh, please.
Yeah, I think I think for me, I became really attached to Claire Foy.
Me too.
And really that whole cast is just stellar. Like, they're just everybody. Matt Smith is great. Yes. Claire Foy is great. Vanessa Kirby. Like, everybody is on their A game. Even Jared Harris, for the amount that he's in it as George VI, is just so compelling.
Yes. So good.
Like, he's gonna die because obviously she has to become queen,
right? And
the enormity of dread that pervades the landscape of the show, yes, because it is really great. But I think because in the first 2 seasons especially, she's really the underdog. So you're kind of rooting for the new kid on the block. You're watching her struggle and make mistakes and what it's like to be young. She's our age for a good chunk of those seasons, right? She's right in that, and she's really relatable to our generation in that sense. And then you get to the next season, and then you have to become accustomed to the way that they portray the characters. Yes. At a different, at a different time, a different age. They're no longer, let's say, relatable in the way that they were. Like, there's a great scene in season 4 where the episode where Elizabeth's like weirdly deciding which child is the favorite, because every parent has a favorite child, whether they admit it or not. And she says to, I think it's Andrew or Edward, and she's like, that's what I always say, that like, we're no different than everybody else, and they're there in like their giant Scottish palace and like eating the salmon and like all this stuff, and I'm like, we're no different than everybody else, and I'm like, ha, you don't even get it. So and I loved that, and I love that the show really confronts that head on. But I think that also makes it's also very much why I think the first 2 seasons might be just slightly more enjoyable than the second seasons 3 and 4.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That makes sense. I think that does make sense. I do think the cast has a lot to do with it. That's the first thing that I really was attached to Claire Foy and Matt Smith in particular, and I really really loved their portrayal of their characters, and loved how I loved their like on screen chemistry, and I liked them a lot, and I liked a lot of the other agree about Jared Harris. I also actually really liked Alex Jennings, who played Edward VIII, who abdicated.
Yes,
I really liked.
Yeah, he's excellent. Yeah,
I really liked
me
his
too.
character, and I really liked the storytelling around he and Queen Elizabeth, and how they were sort of linked by destiny, and the whole the first 2 seasons sort of conceit and storyline around the crown itself as like an entity, and the sort of magic around it, and the sort of just sort of mystery around it, mystique around it, and how much respect David or Edward VIII had for the institution of the crown, and I found it very interesting as something that's kind of foreign to me as an American. I've always been interested in English things, not to the point where I would call myself an Anglophile, because I don't have the cred. I don't know enough to call myself that, but I've always been always liked it.
But it is a shared history to a certain point, right? Yeah. Because American history is British history until the 1770s, until 1780, about 81. Then we start to really form our own narrative in the mid 1770s. I guess you could argue that maybe like the 1600s is that's American narrative, right? But sure, America's not its own thing. America's not its own thing until the revolution. So
before that, it's British
when we
history.
talk about Henry VIII or whatever else, that's also our history,
right?
That's because that's where many of us come from.
Sure. Yeah. I find that the respect for the crown as an institution, and the reverence that David has, like when at Elizabeth's coronation, when he is having like a viewing party with his friends in France, and they're watching on TV, and he's explaining to his friends who are watching the coronation on TV with him, but he's really explaining to the audience, what's happening. I love that scene, and I love how he's like almost jealous that she gets to have a coronation and he didn't. And I just, there's something about that is just so, it's like a romance almost, where like he has this unrequited love for the crown that he was never able to have it. And she has it, and he's almost jealous of her in a way. It's this beautiful, beautiful story.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's an interesting read on that too, because he could have had that. The whole reason that he didn't and he changed the course of British history forever, is because that he loved Wallace more than the crown.
Right.
But did you actually they don't talk about it on the show, but I think maybe they found it after the season had gone and premiered and whatever else, but that they found some letters in their home in France where Wallace Simpson had basically said, like, I didn't love him as much as he loved me.
Yikes.
And that, like, he said, like, I'm going to leave, like, I'm not going to be king for you. And she didn't have the gumption to stop him. But she, like, said that, like, so basically then she, like, felt like she was caught in with him, like, because he literally gave up being king of the British, like, the king of the United Kingdom, like of Great Britain, of England, Scotland, and Wales, because so that's why she like stuck around out of a sense of obligation to him, because it got too big for her, which is hilarious because he gave up the biggest obligation like ever to be with her. Like,
wow, that's amazing, and slightly awkward, but she stayed with him to the end. To her credit, she did.
Not that she didn't like him. No, it's just that it just got bigger than she wanted it to, and I feel like that's probably. I mean, you watch these 4 seasons, and yes, it's fiction. It's not the real story. So much of it is, we know they were on a boat. So what do you think they talked about?
Yeah, like a lot of the most of the events are real, but the dialogue and maybe some of the feelings that they're expressing are not.
Sure, it's like watching Titanic. Like, sure, maybe there were people who loved each other on that boat, but you know what? The sinking and the fear and that's the real part. The romance story part of it, that bit's of fiction. Right. Yeah. It doesn't make me love it any less, though.
No, it doesn't. And I really, really enjoyed it. I love the way it's written. And not to give short shrift to seasons 3 and 4, because I really do enjoy them. 4 more than 3, but I really really enjoyed the Diana stuff. I think that I can't remember the actor who played Diana. I'm going to use my one lookup, but
Aaron Kruger. Use the lookup. Use it.
Yeah, I'm using my lookup. But she was fantastic.
Yeah,
Emma Corrin.
She was incredible. What is it?
Emma Corrin.
What was the name again? Emma Corrin. I was close.
She Samsonite. She
is on Pennyworth.
Oh, okay. Who is she on Pennyworth?
Alfred's girlfriend.
Oh, cool.
Huh? I only watched the pilot, and I'm pretty sure that was basically their relationship.
Fair. She's fantastic. She looks so much like her. It's scary. There are some shots where really you could think that it's actually her. It's wild. But she was fantastic. Gillian Anderson as Margaret Thatcher.
Whoa. She was incredible. She was so good. I kept telling people, like people I know who watch it, I was like, that's Mulder. No, that's Scully. That's Scully. Yeah, like the X-Files, and everyone would be like, I don't watch the X-Files. I've never watched it. I'm like, you at least know who Mulder and Scully are. Like, I barely watch the X-Files, and I know that. Like, come on, people. Yeah. I know. And then I have people who I know who watch the X-Files who never watched the second of The Crown, so I'm like, I can't win. Like, you're the only one. I think you're the only person, actually, that I'm like, Frank.
I'm the overlap.
That was Scully.
The Venn diagram.
Yeah, there's Frank right in the middle, as usual. Yeah. No, yeah, and transformative. In a way that I also love John Lithgow, actually, as Winston Churchill. I thought,
just going to say, I loved him too, yeah.
Yeah, he was great. I wouldn't necessarily say he didn't really look like Churchill so much as that, but he captured the essence of Churchill, and I think that is really what I was struck with.
Yeah,
his performance was extraordinary.
But it was an excellent performance, and he really did get the spirit of it, and the he got his persona. Gillian Anderson had the look and the speech pattern, and she really was doing a very good impersonation. Really well.
I think essence. Essence. The essence. So with this season, I found it weirdly pro Thatcher in Thatcher the person, even if you don't agree with her politics, it was pro Thatcher the person. But then it was pro. I found it pro Diana, anti-royal family, in a way that season 3 wasn't. I found I think that they made a clear delineation in which we like Diana, we don't like the way the royal family treated Diana.
Yeah.
And it almost makes her blameless, and it makes Charles look like the worst person
I know
ever. I know. And I think it was my mom I was talking about my mom, somebody with this with my mom, and she said, she's like, they went years of having a happy marriage, but you like every second he's like, Camilla, I miss you, I miss you, Camilla, yeah, and it's like, and and again, that's the television side of things, but I guess I wanted to watch just a little bit of them actually just being like, I know, nice to each other.
I did too,
as opposed to be like, we promise to be nice to one another, and then they're not.
It was interesting because I did have the impression, anyway, that they had a few years of happiness before things started to really fall apart. And that's not what the show portrays at all, really. There's like a few moments, isolated moments where they're happy or they're being nice to each other, or Charles is sort of like, all right, I guess I'll be faithful to my wife, I guess. There's a few moments like that, but for the most part, it's like Camilla morning, noon, and night, Camilla before the wedding, Camilla during the wedding, Camilla after the wedding. It's just always been about Camilla, and I only married you because my family forced me to.
And I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I don't know. Right? Like the timelines are a little fuzzy in season 4. I'll say, like in some of the previous seasons, they were very good about like giving you like, this is November 25th, 1964 or whatever.
Yes.
And updating you throughout the season as to where we are in time. But in season 4, they were a little fuzzy about it, and they maybe for the sake of storytelling, and they covered a lot of ground. They covered like 13 years.
Tons.
In 2 episodes. So they're moving fast.
And that's just season 4. That's not even season 3.
Right. Right. That's just season 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I found that a little confusing. I was looking like, has it been a month, a year? Like, what are we talking about since the wedding, or since Thatcher took office, or whatever? Like, give me some context here. So I was a little lost about those things sometimes.
Yeah.
Josh O'Connor as Prince Charles, I think, is also really has a lot of the mannerisms down.
I'm gonna miss him. Yeah, he's an actor that I like. A Matt Smith. I miss you. Not like Tobias Menzies is great. He's a great Philip.
Yes,
it's like a calm, maybe sturdier in his place kind of Philip. I like that. I liked it, especially in 4, his conversation with Diana near the end, where he's like, I was you, and even like the women have like they're like luncheon, like the Queen Mother and Margaret, and they're like, as Philip did, they're like, we beat Philip down, we got it, but they did, like, that's what's like in this little show world of things, they certainly did, and I just like how they made that connection between Philip and Diana that way.
Yeah, there are a lot of connections like that. There's sort of two sides of the same coin, like Philip and Diana, like Elizabeth and David, like these are very good sort of parallels or two sides of the same coin type of polar opposites.
That's right. But I will miss Josh O'Connor, right? That's his name. I've only ever seen him in The Crown, and he was in Emma, with Anna Taylor-Joy. He was hilarious in that. If you want if you like anything remotely Anglophile, like anything, I highly recommend Emma. It was like if Wes Anderson got a hold of a Jane Austen novel and was like, what can I do with this? Yeah, very fun. Very, very fun.
Speaking of great scenes towards the end of season 4, Olivia Colman, I think, single-handedly earned her Emmy in the scene where she is chewing out Charles because he is complaining about his marriage and he wants to give up on it and everything, and she just tells him to, like, shut the F up, do your job, start acting like a king if you want to be a king one day. Like, I don't want to hear the whining. Your job is to do this, and you're just going to do it, and end of the story. She just tears him a new one, and it was because she's so reserved Olivia Colman specifically portrayed Elizabeth with a lot of restraint and a lot of, even when she was livid with Thatcher, and she still kept it very close to the vest. And this is the first time we saw Olivia Colman's Queen Elizabeth really like explode on someone, and she
right
came at
her
him.
last episode of 2 seasons.
Last episode of 2 seasons, and she came at him with all this fury, and it was fantastic. And like, give that woman an Emmy for that performance, that scene alone. Fantastic.
I agree. She was incredible. This might be blasphemy, but I liked Helena Bonham Carter in these 2 seasons.
Me too.
I was not totally enthralled with her performance as Margaret. And I don't know, that part of that just might have been like, you got 2 seasons of Margaret not really like in it to win it. Like, you know, she had like her 1 episode in season 4 and that was fine. But Margaret's life was, this is sad to say and a little weird, but like it was more television drama worthy when she was younger. And so there was just a little bit more to get out of Vanessa Kirby than there was of Helena Bonham Carter. Yes. But she's great, and because she's great in everything. But I felt like I felt like Margaret and Helena Bonham Carter maybe got a little shafted for 2 seasons.
That's fair. I think you're right that like sort of the more of the dramatic events in her life happened in the period that seasons 1 and 2 covered. And I definitely really came to love Vanessa Kirby by the end of season 2. I mean, I did all the way through, let's be honest, but like I really became attached to her, similar to the way that I was attached to Claire Foy or Matt Smith. And so to see anyone replacing her was hard, but the fact that it was Helena Bonham Carter, who's obviously fantastic, was like, okay, this is good. This is great. They're replacing her with somebody who's awesome. But you're right. She just didn't have as much to work with, maybe because the events of her life that were more TV soap opera worthy happened earlier. So yeah, I think that's fair. That's not a knock on HBC at all, I don't think.
No. I don't think so. I was just thinking of episodes that I really liked from these past 2 seasons, and I loved Philip's episode when he was enthralled with the Apollo missions to the moon.
I loved that.
Yeah, part of that because we also really like NASA and that stuff too. But I just loved the like emasculating, like fear that he went through and what good came of that, and stuff like that was great. It was really strong episode. I thought
that was a very good episode, and it was a really great writing and really great storytelling where he was so fascinated by them and thought that the astronauts, the Apollo astronauts, were going to be these titans and these amazing heroic men, and when he met them, they were just sort of like, yeah, I mean. They were just like normal dudes. And they kind of were underwhelming to him. And then they turn around and they're asking him questions about like, is it true that you have 1 million horses at the palace? Tell me all about it. He's like, it's just, I mean, it's fine. It's whatever. It kind of sucks. Like me and my wife didn't even want this. We were kind of hoping this wouldn't happen until we were older. Like as much as his life, it's really a grass is always greener type of thing where he is disinterested in his own life and thinks that what they're doing is truly great and truly making a mark on humanity, and they are just as captivated by the mystique around royalty as he is with the mystique around going to space. And it's really like it kind of takes the wind out of his sails. It's sort of like a don't meet your heroes type of moment.
That's right.
But it's that's a good one. That's a really, really good one. I think
the show's strong formula is dichotomy, like talking, like in conversation with you, like even whether it's like a character dichotomy or episodic dichotomy, that what are we playing off of every single time? Like, I'm going to choose what child is my favorite, or it's going to be royalty versus the presidency, or it's going to be, Thatcher versus, prime minister versus the royal family, or it's, I had another one and I just lost it, but that's really the strength. Yeah, like
it is,
grass is always greener, or that's just conflict, right? That's just it, but it's not conflict. I think that's because it's not always a conflict that causes the dichotomy. It's just analyzing both sides of the situation. Where the guy sneaks into the palace, my side, your side.
That was a really good one. I had no idea that had happened. I was not familiar with those events at all. And the fact that the same guy broke in a few days apart was just wild. But yeah, that was a really good example of dichotomy where it's showing, Thatcher's side of things, showing his side of things. It's showing Queen Elizabeth in the middle, sort of trying to figure out what's what. Very, very interesting. The whole show gives me a lot of sympathy, in a sense, for her job. Like, I didn't really know what the Queen's
totally
job, the sovereign's job was. I just sort of felt like, they're just a figurehead at this point. They don't have any actual governmental function. They're just a vestige of the past, and slowly power's been taken away from them. I didn't realize, that she still does have some actual governmental duties, minor though they may be, or sort of rarely needed as they might be. They're still important. And that sort of at least conceptually, their whole system, the way that constitutional monarchy is designed to work, as much as the monarch might be a smaller piece of that today, it still has an important piece in the functioning of the system. And it was very, very telling. But the biggest message to me that I got for the whole show is that the whole family has to put up with a whole bunch of garbage. And most of them are putting up with a lot of, they can't live the lives they want. They can't marry the people they want. They can't do the things that they want. And it's all in service of one person. Like Queen Elizabeth is the only person really she gets the best deal out of everybody in the show. As far as the show portrays things,
that's right. And the worst deal, but also the best.
Right, you're right.
Yeah.
The worst as well. You're right. For sure. But like, they are all like, essentially Margaret couldn't marry, Peter Townsend, so that Elizabeth wouldn't be in a bad position. You know what I mean? Like, it's a fascinating set of circumstances and set of like, it's very complex and it's very like, well, I mean, there's like, you want to be right by your sister, but you're also like the head of this church and the head of this government. And like, what's the right thing to do? You're supposed to be an example to people, but like, this is the real world and your sister wants to marry this person. It's very complex. It's not as cut and dried as I once thought.
No, and I think it's great to examine that really nothing is as cut and dry as we want to think it is. Like, why don't you just do that? Like, you're the queen, you're the president, you're the prime minister. Like, that's not how these systems work at all. That's not how life works. That's not even how your job in an office works, or in a school, or in a hospital, or like a doctor can't just be like, oh, I think this patient needs this. Like, here you go. There's a lot to that. You got to run down the check things. Oh, your head hurts? Well, surgery.
Yeah, right.
Like,
it's always more complicated than we think. And so this was really great in showing me some of the ways, in a dramatized way, but it's some of the ways in which some of these situations are more complex than I might have thought. So I'm very interested in seeing how. I know there's 2 more seasons coming. There was only supposed to be 1, but now there's going to be 2.
It sort of. It was originally 6. It was pitched as.
Oh.
It was. I think it was originally pitched as 3. Like when he went to Netflix. When the showrunner went to Netflix, he's like, I want to do 3 seasons, and then that transformed into 6, and then they were like, nope. 5's good. I know where I want to end it. And then in the middle of writing 5, they were like, nope.
6 after all.
6. Yeah, 6 after all. Yeah. Okay. So, and he says it's not necessarily going to get closer to modern day. It's just going to spend more time delving into a particular areas that they want to spend time in. So I think we're going to entrench ourselves in the latter half of Diana's life, and then whatever comes after that.
I was listening to our friends Kirsty and Kelsey did an episode on season 4 of The Crown just recently, which I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And they were speculating that maybe season 5 will be Charles and Diana's divorce and end with Diana's death, and that maybe season 6 would cover the
aftermath of the coverage of that.
The death of the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret and sort of the early 2000s and probably end there. One thing I have read is that so Harry and Meghan have a deal with Netflix. I think they make documentaries, or they're working with them to make documentaries. And as part of that deal with Netflix, they made Netflix promise that they're not going to cover their story on The Crown. So it has to end before Harry and Meghan, and presumably it would end before William and Kate.
I would assume that it ends before it. Yeah, that's just so recent that how do you? It's just effectively.
And to your point earlier about like biases and opinions getting in there, like how are you not going to portray it in a way that either completely aligns with sort of the media narrative around them, or completely goes against it, or how can you do that without that not being at the forefront of everyone's mind? Because we all watched them get married less than 10 years ago.
Right.
So it's just, it probably wouldn't be particularly good TV even, because like we lived through those events.
That's right.
Most of us lived through Diana's death as well, but it's further removed, and you can make some, you can dramatize it somehow.
I think it's a few it's a few of those things, but I think you're right that we just lived through it. But there's also this this group of people, not a unified group that they'll watch The Crown on Netflix, this fiction, and go, oh, that's how it happened. That's the real life, and that's bad enough with media coverage. Never mind a televised drama on TV. And I think that just for the sanctity of, because really The Crown is in its own way a big old love letter to the royal family, and so in its own way to the British monarchy. So it would just be good to avoid it. I think in the best interest of everything. I think that they are correct in that. I think we're going to see one more season of Diana, and then another one of the aftermath of that story. I know Elizabeth Debicki is playing Diana in the next season. I saw a tweet when she was cast, so like months and months and months and months ago, that was like, "Let Elizabeth Debicki be tall, you cowards."
Nice.
Yep, so good. Oh man.
Well,
but the new cast is great. I'm looking forward to Jonathan Pryce as Philip, and oh gosh, who else did they cast? I'll use my lookup.
Attaboy.
Because I haven't yet.
I had seen. I didn't recognize most of the names when I did look it up.
Imelda Staunton is going to play.
Do I know her from?
Oh, she's Umbridge.
Umbridge. Okay, so she'll be the.
She's
queen.
Umbridge from Harry Potter. She'll be the queen. Leslie Manville is Princess Margaret.
Princess Margaret was I'm sorry, I was thinking Princess Anne. But Princess Anne was fantastic on.
Princess Anne was her name, Erin Doherty, yes, I think. Like the underdog of these two seasons. Fantastic. I want a spinoff with Princess Anne, and she was just so great, and not enough. I don't think enough was given to her, but I want more. Fantastic. Yeah, she was so good.
Yeah, I love her relationship.
It looks like
Philip.
Same. Yeah, they had. I mean, everybody in all 4 seasons, great chemistry across the board. I recommend watching some interviews with Claire Foy and Matt Smith, because they just thought they were the bee's knees, like each other. They just clearly had a great time working together, and it really comes across in their performances. But that's all that's cast right now as far as this episode is concerned. I mean, I'm sure they'll announce it as soon as this episode is done recording. Sure, yeah. But I'm super excited. Yeah, I look forward to The Crown. When we did our episodes that define you, like the TV shows that what should people watch to get a bit of you, The Crown was one of mine. I don't know if you remember that.
But I can see why now.
Yeah, that's great. So good. So good. Anyway, Frank, where can the people find us when we're not hanging? I was gonna say when we're not hanging out in Buckingham Palace. Why are we? Oh, nice. Good call.
You can find us at beerwithgeeks.com. There you'll find all of the episodes of our show, the show notes. Like I said, I have some links in the show notes to some things we talked about, like the episode of Hatewatch with us where they talked about The Crown Season 4 if you want more of that. Got some links about Autocrat, coffee milk, and things like that. So check that out at beerwithgeeks.com. You can also find there links to thoughtbubbleaudio.com, where you'll find shows like Hate Watch with us. You'll find links to our patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio, where you can support all of our shows by helping us to keep the lights on and support us financially during these strange times. You can email us at beerwithgeeks@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at beerwithgeeks. You can find us anywhere podcasts are found, in any podcast app, be it Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, anywhere you can find podcasts, you'll find this one. And all the links for those are so you can subscribe are at beerwithgeeks.com. You know, I noticed actually that a fair number of our listeners are listening to us in the web browser on Google Chrome and things like that, and I appreciate that. But it would actually be better for us if you subscribed in an app like Apple Podcasts or Overcast or Google Podcasts or whatever your favorite is. It would actually be really good for us. So if it's not too much trouble, and if that's a way you don't mind listening to podcasts, I would recommend that very much. Another thing that helps us is leaving us ratings and reviews in places like Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen. But Apple Podcasts in particular is a great way to get recognized and discovered. So if you've got a moment, please leave us a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts. A quick star rating is fine. If you want to write a review, that's great too. But anything you can do there goes a long way to help us. So thank you all so much for listening, and have a jolly good day to you, sir.
Well, that was so nice, Frank. I wish you got a jolly good day as well.
I don't know.
Also, cheers. No, I don't know.
I don't know. Cheers.
Anyway, Frank, that's fine. Until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.